Hi friends, Steve DePoe here for the Rose Realty team with this week's real estate vlog. Today's topic, what confuses millennials the most about the real estate home buying or selling process? So these we kind of broke this topic up into a couple of different categories: commissions, iBuyer programs, Texas state law, licensing and training for real estate agents, and basically mortgages and financing. So number one, commissions. The usual commissions paid during a real estate transaction is 6%. Sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower. These commissions are usually paid by the seller. Okay, so if you're a buyer, you're not going to really pay, you're not going to pay the commissions. We'll get to that in just a second. But again, those commissions are 6%. Now, if you're using an iBuyer program, the I in iBuyer stands for investment. These are something new. They've actually been around for about 10 years or so. Everyone's seen these commercials. We'll buy your house at full price. We'll close when you want to. What's something else? You don't have people walking through your house. No open houses. Typically, the fees associated with an iBuyer program are somewhere between 10 and 20%. Okay, so that's an extra 4 to 14% compared to the standard 6% during a standard or normal real estate transaction. So it's something to consider. Hey, if you can just spend that extra 4 to 14%, God bless you. But if you're looking to net the most amount of money possible, then maybe the iBuyer program isn't for you. We've covered that in previous vlogs. We can talk to you about that if you're interested. Using a buyer's agent is commission free. Yeah, not really. Not so much. So 42% of people, especially millennials out there, think that using a buyer's agent is free. Now, here's the truth, right? A buyer's agent is typically 3%, and the seller typically pays that commission. Okay, I just mentioned that on the previous slide. Now, there's been talk over the last 5 or 6 years to have the buyer actually pay some of that commission. Really, that's not going to fly that well, because the buyer is paying for so many other things, paying for have a big down payment, paying for inspections and appraisals and background and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of fees associated on the buyer side, and so if we don't really think that the buyer is actually going to be asked to pay some of those commissions or some of those fees. But typically right now, the seller pays all the commissions and fees to real estate agents. Texas state law is another topic. So about 16.5 or 17% do not realize that you don't need a real estate agent to do a real estate transaction. Now, it's in your best interest to use a real estate agent. Why? Because typically on the other side of the equation, so if you're a buyer, typically the seller will have a real estate agent. The seller will also be looking out for their best interests. Somebody's going to have to look out for your best interest, and that's usually the real estate agent. So we take an oath. We have a fiduciary responsibility to look out for our client, whether you're the buyer or the seller. So if you're the buyer, okay, and you're working with me, my sworn oath to you is that I'm going to look out for your best interests. And so a lot of people don't realize that relationship. 82% don't realize that agents are required to be, in Texas, are required by law to be licensed and have ongoing education and training. So I don't just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to be a real estate agent. I'm not going to be a high-tech consultant anymore. I want to be a real estate agent. I had to make that decision, and I had to follow these steps to be trained, licensed, get a sponsor, be bonded, have a background check, all that kind of jazz. And people don't really realize that it's a process that I had to go through, and it wasn't just a whim. It's a career choice right now that I made and that Rose made. Mortgages is another good topic. 4.0 mortgages. So 50% don't understand how much they need as a down payment, if anything, to buy a house. They also don't understand the mortgage programs that are available to them in the state of Texas. Are you a first responder, an educator in the healthcare field? They're a veteran, naturally. There are all kinds of programs available to you in the state of Texas to reduce your down payment, to reduce your interest on your loan, all kinds of things. I mean, so we are associated with mortgage companies that have those types of programs available. So it's important for you to know that. PMI insurance. PMI insurance is insurance that is an extra cost that you have to pay if your down payment isn't at a certain level. And we can talk about that one-on-one. So mortgages are another thing that the millennials don't quite understand. And number 4.5, the process, either the buying or selling process. 87% of the millennials out there are unclear about the buying and selling process. It's a rather complicated process when you come down to it, and it's got a lot of nuance to it, okay? Now, what we did with the Rose Realty team is we put that process basically into flow charts. So we follow those flow charts every single time. That, number one, lets us avoid a lot of the speed bumps along the way. That's not to say there's not going to be a pothole every now and then, but because we have that process and we follow that process, we avoid a lot of the speed bumps and a lot of the potholes to get you to closing. And that's the important thing, to get you to closing. Now, we've talked about a lot of things here. We've talked about iBuyer programs. We talked about the buying and selling process. We talked about mortgage. All of these topics we've talked about in the past in previous vlogs. If you go to our YouTube channel, Let's Do Real Estate Texas, you can have access. Yorkie's barking over there. If you can have access to any of these vlogs that we've done. There's also at the bottom here, you can also see the link to our YouTube channel. It's free. And if you can't get there either through a search or through the link, give me a call, send me a text, send me an email. My contact information is at the end of this vlog. Give me a call. I'll get you a link to that. Next week, as we're going to talk about, is now the perfect time to sell. And we're going to compare what's going on today during this pandemic to 2008. And there's a lot of big differences. Now, thanks for joining in. I've got to go find out what's going on with Corky. This is Steve DePoe for the Rose Realty team. I'm going to bounce.